Hello and welcome to this short series of informational videos related to the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail and the alternatives routing analysis. My name is Michael Doherty, and I'm the Landscape Architecture Studio Manager at SLR Consulting. SLR is a multidisciplinary environmental design and advisory firm that was hired to conduct the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail alternative routing analysis. I was the project manager for that effort and have been a landscape architect for 20 years with a focus of much of my career on multi-use trail feasibility, routing, detailed design, and construction. This first video will briefly address what is an alternative route analysis and how does this analysis relate to the state environmental quality review process. The two videos to follow will more directly address the analysis done within the defined reaches of the proposed Hudson Highland Fjord Trail. So first, what is the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act and its review process? The SEQRA Act requires all local, regional, and state government agencies to equally examine the environmental, social, and economic considerations for a certain project or action during their review. Agencies must follow the multi-step SEQRA decision process, which requires them to assess the environmental significance of all actions they have the power to approve, fund, or directly assume. If an action consists of multiple phases, sets of activities, or if separate agencies are involved, SEQRA requires agencies to jointly consider the cumulative impacts during their review. To assist the lead agency in determining significance, environmental impact assessments have been standardized through the Environmental Assessment Form, also known as an EAF. Agencies must use these forms to comply with current SEQRA regulations. The multi-step review process informs the lead agency's decision to require or prepare an environmental impact statement, or EIS, and whether to hold a public hearing on the proposed action. The Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail was deemed a Type 1 action requiring a full environmental assessment form to be completed. The selected lead agency for the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail is the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. Through the review criteria, a positive declaration was determined, meaning the project has the potential for impacts to the environment, resulting in the requirement of an environmental impact statement to be prepared and made available for public review. This is where the current state of the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail project currently resides in the SEQRA process. The EIS is used to analyze reasonable alternatives to the proposed action and to identify ways to avoid or reduce adverse impacts. This is where the alternative route analysis comes into play. Additionally, SEQRA encourages agencies to establish a clear record of their decision-making process, including public participation. This speaks to the efforts of Hudson Highland Fjord Trail to provide these videos, ongoing design documents, and to conduct public engagement forums. So let's jump into a bit more project-specific information. The Hudson Highland Fjord Trail is a 7.5-mile proposed trail connecting several key destinations from Beacon to Cold Spring. These destinations include Long Dock Park, Denning Point, Notch, Dutchess Manor, Breakneck Ridge, Little Stony Point, and Dockside Park. The Hudson Highland Fjord Trail project has an established design criteria that at its forefront is meeting of universal accessibility laws and guidelines. Per the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, all newly built or substantially renovated facilities and trails must adhere to the most current accessibility design standards. As a public facility that is related to transportation and recreation, accessibility is mandated by the Federal Americans with Disability Act, which requires specific design standards for facilities to be in compliance with the law. To meet accessibility criteria, the basic trail must provide for accessible surfaces that are stable and slip resistant, have a cross pitch of 2% or less, and have a running slope, preferably at 5% or less, but no more than 8%. The trail is preferred to be 12 to 14 feet in width to allow for comfortable two-way multi-use traffic, but at a minimum must be 10 feet wide with a minimum overhead clearance of 8 feet 6 inches. The project has also set resiliency goals related to flooding and sea level rise. To that end, the desired minimum elevation is 8.3 feet. SEQRA requires that alternatives to the proposed project be identified and evaluated through the EIS so that the decision maker may consider whether alternatives exist that would minimize or avoid adverse environmental effects. The EIS should consider a range of reasonable alternatives to the project that have the potential to reduce or eliminate a proposed project's impacts. The alternatives should be feasible, considering the goals and objectives of the project sponsor. If the EIS identifies a feasible alternative that eliminates or reduces significant adverse impacts, the lead agency may consider adopting that alternative as the proposed project. The EIS can include alternatives that may have similar, or in some cases, greater significant adverse environmental impacts than the proposed project, or may not address all the goals and objectives of the proposed project. Including these alternatives demonstrates the planning decisions being made. The vision for the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail has been developing over many years, with the first significant planning steps initiated in 2015 through a master plan routing document that included the analysis and feasibility of several route options, some of which are included in the current alternative routing analysis. Throughout the route vetting process, opportunities and constraints have been identified to inform decisions on prudent and feasible routes. Key considerations in the vetting process continue to be property ownership, physical barriers to entry, environmental and permitting requirements, and construction and implementation feasibility. The previous and current planning efforts have included several public input sessions, surveys, and public comment periods that have influenced the route selection, which will be defined in greater detail in subsequent videos. Routing analysis includes an iterative process of desktop reviews, on-the-ground field investigations, and team meetings to understand project visions, goals, and schematic designs, as well as understand past study findings, previously identified routes, and current prudent alternatives needed to be studied in more detail. To organize information, observations, and input already gathered through the design process, an evaluation matrix was developed that would allow our team to consistently rate each identified route against a set of defined criteria. A set of 10 categories were defined to create the alternative analysis evaluation matrix. The categories were established from the overall project goals, desired performance criteria, information from the master plan process, and ongoing meetings with stakeholders. It should be noted that the categories can be both quantitative and qualitative and may contain elements of each within a single defined category. We understand not everyone may see the rating system or scoring in the same light. However, we are confident that the pertinent information has been provided to allow for rational discussion, debate, and consensus. The following slides will introduce the 10 evaluation categories which were rated on a scale of 1 to 5, allowing for a total of 50 points per defined route to determine the most advantageous alignment. The next two videos will provide more information on the defined routes and their ratings. To begin with, alignment design is the basic infrastructure performance of the trail. Traffic and safety prioritizes universal accessibility, limited commingling of trail users and vehicles, and improved traffic calming, buffers, and ease of emergency response. Context prioritizes the overall experience of the trail, including view sheds, variety of terrain traversed, access to the water, and separation from vehicular travel. Connectivity places an emphasis on both the physical and visual access to the river, other trails, and key destinations. Diversity of users emphasizes universal accessibility. multimodal options, and variety of experiences for all ages and abilities. Congestion management prioritizes options that manage and diffuse access to popular destinations to minimize impacts on community, environment, and promotes new experiences along the route. Regional support expands on the region's established amenities, enhancing existing and proposed facilities, and promotes routes that have a high level of community support. Environmental stewardship prioritizes minimizing impacts to ecology, habitat, and natural processes. An emphasis is placed on protection of sensitive environmental resources such as wetlands, erodible soils, rare vegetation, and threatened species, as well as cultural resources. Community places an emphasis on protecting signature natural and man-made elements that help define a sense of place, as well as limiting private property impacts, including the need for easements or acquisitions. And finally, implementation speaks directly to the feasibility of construction and prioritizes sustainable and cost-effective solutions. While this wraps up the initial video of the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail's state environmental review needs and process, as well as the alternative routing rating categories, we'll leave you with a quick overview of the alternative analysis study areas. The alternatives analysis has followed the master planning process in delineating the trail into 4 distinct reaches of trail from Cold Spring to Beacon. In the next overview video, we will provide a brief introduction to reaches 1 and 2 from Dockside Park to Breakneck Ridge. Thank you for your time.